Well, Patrick Henry wins his election to the House of Delegates. Not surprisingly, Patrick Henry usually wins elections that he runs in, but he would never serve. Late in May, he's in much pain. He says it felt like the gravel, felt like kidney stones. And if you've ever had a kidney stone, extremely painful. Apparently nothing is passing through his bowels. They realize that he's very ill. A doctor is called in, Dr. Cabell, competent 18th century physician, but it's 18th century medicine. He's got some kind of bowel blockage, and there's very little that can be done. So finally, Dr. Cabell gives Patrick Henry, in great pain at Red Hill, a vial of liquid mercury to drink. And the idea is this heavy metal will push your bowel open, and the doctor tells Henry, it will give you immediate relief, and he trails off. And Henry turns to him and says, you mean, doctor, that it will give me immediate relief or will prove fatal immediately? And the doctor nods his head. Henry's death scene is very interesting. Cabell goes off out of the house, apparently in tears. He loved Henry, admired Henry greatly, even though they had a number of political and religious disagreements. Henry is with his family. He talks to his family. He wishes them well. And he bows his head, says a prayer, drinks the liquid mercury, and it is said that he can see the blood congealing in his fingernails. Now, he probably was on death's bed anyway when this was done. He probably has a bowel blockage, we believe now, probably an intussusception. But Henry dies in June of 1799. Now, he's left his family a substantial legacy. With his will, in addition to all the property that he owned, which he's going to give to his children, is found a copy of the Stamp Act resolutions. You recall the Stamp Act resolutions from the second lecture that arguably started the revolution. But he has them, and on the backside he writes this: whether this will prove a blessing or a curse will depend upon the use our people make of the blessings which a gracious God hath bestowed on us. If they are wise, they will be great and happy. If they are of a contrary character, they will be miserable. Righteousness alone can exalt them as a nation. Reader, whoever thou art, remember this, and in thy sphere practice virtue thyself and encourage it in others. Well, politically, Patrick Henry's death is very important. John Randolph of Roanoke, who becomes an important Jeffersonian Democratic Republican, writes that had Patrick Henry lived, the electoral votes of Virginia would have been divided and Mr. Jefferson lost his election. Jefferson could not have won the election of 1800 had Henry lived. Now, the reasons for that are a little bit complicated. Again, the nation is new. We don't really quite know what we're going to do with the Electoral College. We continue to have problems with the Electoral College today. But one of the issues in the early republic was how the electoral votes should be divided. So if Virginia, say, had 12 electoral votes, and John Adams wins 40% of the vote and Thomas Jefferson wins 60, should the electoral votes be divided? So Jefferson gets most, but John Adams gets some. Or should there be a winner-take-all electoral system, so that when John Adams wins 40% of the vote and Jefferson wins 60, Jefferson gets all of Virginia's electoral votes? The Constitution doesn't specify, and the states can do what they want. In this period, Massachusetts, trying to support John Adams' candidacy, had adopted a winner-take-all system, saying that all of their electoral votes would go to the winner, who they knew would be John Adams, basically denying Jefferson possibly 1 or 2 electoral votes in Massachusetts. Virginia, aware of this, in the fall of 1799, adopts a winner-take-all system, which takes electoral votes which would have gone to John Adams and makes sure that they go to Thomas Jefferson. What Randolph is saying is that had Henry lived, he's the most popular politician in Virginia, with the exception of Washington, and he would have seen to it that that law would not have been changed. And Virginia would have given a significant number of electoral votes. Well, actually, you get into some interesting vote counting numbers. But Randolph was convinced, he says at one point, Patrick Henry was worth 5 times 5 electoral votes, which John Adams needed. All of which suggests that Patrick Henry is far more important to our history and far more important to the early republic than we've been led to believe. and maybe we need to revisit his legacy.